Hi everyone, welcome to a very exciting, sort of a world building, playing in different worlds episode of Words, Images, and Worlds. I just use the word worlds a whole lot because I'm talking with someone who's created in many different spaces, and that is author John Jackson Miller. John, thank you for joining. Thank you for talking with me for a few minutes.
Thanks for having me here.
Absolutely, absolutely. Folks out there will know you for work in many of the titles that you have currently around you, both in comics and prose, just a range of creating in different worlds and different creative communities. And so much appreciation for what you've done. And congratulations on your Scribe nomination this morning as well.
Yeah, that was for yet another world I wrote in. My friend James Mishler and I, he's a designer of games, and we did a comic series for a video game that we didn't know if it was ever going to come out because it kept they kept taking a while with it. But Ubisoft did a video game called Skull and Bones, which was a pirate ship game.
Love that.
And so we did a comic series that got turned into a graphic novel called The Savage Storm. And so that got nominated by the International Association of Media Tie-in Writers. I've actually, I think that's my eighth nomination overall. I've been awarded it four times for the Star Wars Kenobi novel, and then my last three Star Trek novels. I did not have a prose novel in the eligibility period this year, but we got the graphic novel, and that's kind of cool because that's a new category. I had never had a nomination in that category before.
Yeah, yeah, that's very cool, very cool. And you definitely sort of play in these different worlds, different spaces. So lots of questions here about adaptation and sort of that work. But of course, I'm an English teacher, as I
Yeah.
mentioned, and so I'm curious, what connected you with storytelling initially and reading, writing, creating, and exploring?
Well, my mother was a grade school librarian in Memphis, Tennessee, and she encouraged me to keep my books in order and my comic books in order. And I was, drawing and writing my own comics, and of course, Star Wars landed when I was a kid, and Star Trek was on TV and then in the movie theaters.
Hmm.
As I grew older, I continued to be interested in publishing and in writing. I did my own newsletters or fanzines, and sort of mini comics. And But at the same time, I also worked my way through college and as a journalist. I was the editor of the campus newspaper at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, which apparently
Hmm.
you were
Yes,
there as well,
we have
at
that
a
connection. Yeah,
at a much
yeah.
different time. So even though I'm writing about a wide variety of things, I'm also able to dabble into things like, again, we mentioned the Batman
Hmm.
thing. I was working on newspapers its summer session in 1989 when
Hmm.
the Batman Tim Burton movie came out. And so I assigned myself that movie review and also articles on the comics and movie connection and things like that. And I always try to find ways to bring these other worlds into what I was writing for a living.
Hmm.
That wasn't get as a living at the time, but it would become that. After grad school, I ended up for a while, I was editing a line of magazines about lumber, which was not that exciting. Uh, but I, but I was a subscriber to Comics Buyer's Guide, which was edited by Don and Maggie Thompson, who were sort of the George and Martha Washington of comics fandom.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I saw an ad in the back of that paper more than 30 years ago now, looking for somebody to run the trade magazine for the business, their sister publication. And so I came up to Wisconsin and have been there ever since. So for many years there where I'm working on the magazines, I am again writing articles about Star Wars as it connects to comics, Battlestar Galactica comics, and interviewing Richard Hatch from the TV show.
Mhm.
All of these things where I'm putting together. I was the editor of the card game magazine Scry, which was the magazine for people that played Magic the Gathering. And so once again, there's just whole sections of the books that we did on Star Wars cards and on Star Trek cards and various things. So I needed to know about all this stuff. And it's over that time that I get to know people in the business. Once the employees, sold, our interest in the company, I more or less said to my boss, as long as I'm going to stay here, I'm going to start writing for the comics as well. Start writing for for myself as well, and that led to me getting to do a short series at Marvel called Crimson Dynamo,
Mhm. Mhm.
which led to me getting a year on Iron Man, which led to me getting the opportunity to do a single issue comic book for Dark Horse for Star Wars. And one of the things which is special about that is that comic book, which came out almost 20 years ago, is now in a big epic collection, one of these huge
Yes,
physical
yes.
editions. Actually, it's not an epic collection; it's a omnibus. And so the Star Wars Legends Rebellion Omnibus Volume 2, which just came out, has my first story in it, a standalone story called Model Officer, which is, it's really kind of a detective story with Darth Vader trying to solve a mystery. And he's not wearing a Sherlock Holmes hat or anything like that. But
Yes,
anyway,
yeah.
that led to me getting Knights of the Old Republic, the series that ran 5 years in various iterations, and that also is back again because the Epic collections, which are the big fat trade paperbacks, that the first chunk of that series is also now reprinted from Marvel for the first time in I think 8 years, and all of this has happened in the last month, and so
Yeah.
that's great stuff. And then what happens is I make the leap to not just doing comics but also prose as well. So I start with short stories for Star Wars. You'll see them collected in books like Lost Tribe of the Sith. And then I got to do my first novel, where I both wrote the novel and the comics at the same time. That was Knight Errant for Star Wars. That's another thing where we have new editions of both of those books out this year, both the graphic novel and the novel from Random House Worlds. And so, it's wonderful that all these things keep coming back around. Nothing is ever, totally unavailable usually. And then of course Star Wars. Those novels, go on. I do the Kenobi novel. I do the New Dawn novel, which is the novel that ties into the Rebels TV show. And at that time, I hop over to Star Trek and I start doing Trek novels as well.
Yeah.
And through all of this, I'm still doing smaller tie-in projects, short stories for things like Halo and Planet of the
Mhm.
Apes,
Mhm.
comic stories for Halo. I co-wrote the first three Mass Effect video game comics, or graphic novels rather. And that just sort of continues as it fits into my schedule. And then, of course, the schedule of the last year and a half has been, I put out the Strange New Worlds, the first Strange New Worlds novel called The High Country. Literally
Mhm.
the night that came out, I got the offer to write my most recent Star Wars novel, which is Star Wars: The Living Force, which is the first novel featuring the entire Jedi Council. It's set a year before the Phantom Menace. And then while I'm writing that, I get the offer from my Star Wars editor, actually, to dive into the Batman cinematic universe with, bringing us full circle, the first novel based on Tim Burton's Batman movie, Batman in 1989, and also Batman Returns from '92.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
for years when people have asked me what my dream project would be, that I haven't done, I never asked for that because I never even knew it was an option. It is something that only came about because the enduring popularity of those films, plus you had the Flash movie that came out with Michael Keaton in it, and then
Hmm.
of course Michael Keaton at the Oscars. It's not a problem either, where uh, he's joking around with Danny DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger on stage. That was very funny.
Hmm. Hmm.
Anyway, so yeah, I've made my way back around to comic book superheroes the long way.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you work in all of these different spaces. What's it like to sort of transition from one space to another and say to put the Star Trek world aside and go to Star Wars or vice versa?
Well, the main things are just where I can get the lore from. In terms of yeah, there are obviously storytelling differences between them all because you're not going to do a science themed plot in Star Wars.
Hmm.
You're not going to do something that has a solution that only Jordan LaForge would be able to think of. Because in Star Wars, it's a fantasy, it's a space opera. We never know why the hyperdrive quits. We just know that it does. Um, but things like when you're populating the world with references to historical characters and things, and sayings and that sort of thing, to make it have a lived in universe feel. Well, obviously in Star Wars, we don't have Earth's history behind us, and
Hmm.
so if I want to do something that refers to a particular historical event, or that is similar to one, I can't say, oh, well, this is like the War of 1812. I have to say, this is like, and I either have to go off and get a similar, thing to refer to from the history, or I have to create something.
Hmm. Hmm.
Or if there's a philosophical work that I want to refer to, and obviously, I can't mention Aristotle or something in Star Wars. I'll hang it on somebody else. In Star Trek, it is much easier in that there is human history to draw upon,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
so I have quotations that start every book and frequently every section that come from usually real life people, and we do a mix of real life people and then some people from after our time, just to give it that feel. Although that is a balancing act, how to do that, which I can talk about separately here. And then, of course, I get into Batman, and I'm writing in a time frame where, I'm in the milieu of the movie, and I have to match the movie's I have to match the movie's technology, the movie's sensibilities, the movie's everything, and I have to watch really carefully. And of course, I saw the movie 12 times when it came out, so I kind of know what's there. But I mean, we know that we have, fashion wise, there's a retro aesthetic, except for the main character, except for Vicky Vale, who looks modern in dress. We have a newsroom that is very much from the front page era. I mean, it's very much from the 40s and 50s, and yet the reporter that is our point of view character for a lot of that movie, has a recorder,
Hmm. Hmm.
and so I have to figure out, what I'm going to do. So a lot of what I'm doing in each franchise as I go from one to the other is yeah, I have to figure out what story, what type of story I can do. But then I also, and what type of story fits. Batman Resurrection is a mystery, which fits with it being Batman.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
a Star Trek novel, um, even though the High Country is full of horses, because of the nature of the story, it is. As my editor said, it's not a Western. It's actually a science fiction novel with horses in it.
Yeah.
The science is at the center of everything that's going on. It just happens to be we have all these other trappings that I've thrown in, and that's kind of how it. That's kind of how it works. And I mentioned the balancing act. One of the things that I'll do. I have a slideshow that I do at certain events. I did it at Gen Con last year for the Writers Symposium. Has to do with people writing in shared universes. And what I think one of the biggest potholes that new writers run into is, particularly if this is not a franchise they know much about. Well,
Hmm.
first of all, that's dangerous anyway because people can tell when you don't care.
Yeah.
But you don't always have that choice. I mean, James and I, neither of us were fans of this video game before we wrote this graphic novel because the video game hadn't come out.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so that that's sometimes you're hired to generate attention, generate interest in things. But yeah, I think one of the things that people will run into, and this is whether they're writing for a shared universe in in something like what we're doing in writing for the tie-ins, but also people will write in fan fiction universes that they'll share, or they'll write in role-playing game campaigns where they'll be sharing documents. One of the I think pitfalls or hazards people run into is they try to sound like they belong by dropping in buzzwords, by
Hmm.
dropping
Hmm.
in just a lot of things, and you can tell really bad. Um, I don't want to call it fan fiction, but really bad writing in this regard is something where there'll be two or three name drops. Yeah, I mentioned using the lore to refer to. I
Hmm.
only do that occasionally for a little flavor. I don't drop in every single line. It was
Yeah.
as blue as the lakes of Corcoran or whatever the planet is, because the reader doesn't know what that color is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I understand people want to say, yeah, but this is an alien area and this is otherworldly and whatever. Yeah, but we're writing for humans on Earth.
Hmm.
And it does no good to do things that are um, gratuitously both saying, hey, I belong to this particular world, but also it takes you out of the world at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a foible of pulp science fiction in the 40s and 50s, and particularly you'll see it on some of the old 50s and 60s TV shows where they'll see they'll give names for common things to make them sound outer spacey or whatever.
Right. Right.
Hand me the Fedotron over there. Do you mean the spoon? Yeah, that's exactly it. And I think that takes people out of it. I also am not a fan of the triple, and that's one of those things that they do in the TV shows as well. Spock will talk about the number of casualties in the First World War, the Second World War, and the Third World War. That's okay, but they'll be talking about some of the great singers of the universe, like Joan Baez, Perry Como, and Waldor 7 from the third moon of Vulcan. And it's all that's always just like the leisure suit guy at the party.
Right, right.
It is gratuitous. The fans can see it a mile off.
Yeah.
And there's ways to do it where it's not it's not so glaring. But I absolutely embrace the notion that it is alien. It is a different world. You're trying to show that world, but I just think that some of the shorthand that people use. One of the things I decided I would never do in my Star Trek would be give any characters names that are 30 letters long or
Hmm.
unpronounceable or otherwise.
Hmm.
And do I doubt that there are people with such names? No, I don't doubt that. But I also have an audiobook reader to think of,
Right.
and a reader to think of. And if you're gonna play that game, you gotta throw in a shorter version of the name pretty quick.
Yeah.
Fred for short or something like that. Because again, there are ways to express that you're in a world that you're living in and you're seeing what it's like. And this is a world that has other cultures in it that have other naming systems, that have other this, have other that. And they have different feelings about the color blue, or different
Hmm.
feelings about things. There's ways to do it that don't make the book a morass to try to get through.
Yeah, yeah. Kind of the shoehorning effect of let me just see what I can cram in here as opposed to more of a natural feel.
Yeah, yeah. I've never admitted this before, but I never got more than 5 pages into Dune,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and I have now seen both the movies, and I'm flying through it.
yeah.
And part of it is because I could not do that novel without the Cliff Notes, and
Some reference material. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
and no, and reading it, I understand it is absolutely a classic of an immersive work, where we're seeing all of these different names and concepts thrown at us, not necessarily with context, but it is work.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I imagine process wise, when you're working on a property like one of these, first of all, it's by invitation. But also you have to know where you're going. So there's no like flying by the seat of your pants. There's
Right.
none of that in working through. So I imagine you have to have a pretty solid outline and a pretty solid
Yeah.
pitch and beyond to tackle some of these projects.
Yeah, everything requires a full outline. All the comics require full scripts. Things go through several layers of the editors, and then also um, the people at the licensor. And with Lucasfilm, there's also the Lucasfilm Story Group that's involved, because everything we do is canon. Is something that bears upon what happens with the movies and the TV shows. And so there is that process. It is the part of the process that I have the hardest time with. And I don't mean the interaction with the editors and the studios. I just do these very, particularly with the mysteries. These are things that have these are big combination locks,
Mhm.
and I've got to get all the tumblers to fit. I've got to get all the sides of the Rubik's cube, to use a dated reference, into the right place. And when I'm in it, I am lost for a few good weeks while I'm working on it. Because I'm trying to figure out, all right, how do I, in the case of the Living Force, I wanted to showcase all 12 Jedi Masters. Nobody gets a cameo. Everybody gets significant sequences.
Mhm.
And this involved getting it out with index cards and then a spreadsheet, and then figure out how I was going to interlace these stories like a movie. So we have episodes with these two or this one, and we hop from one to the other of these sequences, and then I have to do it in a way that is engaging to read.
Hmm.
So if you're with a couple of characters that people are not that interested in, uh, wait up, we're going somewhere else soon.
Right.
And so that is one of the dynamics. In the High Country novel, I crash landed, Captain Pike and Uhura and Spock and Number One all on this planet in different locations. And
Hmm.
so they are all traveling and eventually, encounter one another. But they're all traveling in different places. This required me to have a map as well, and so there are maps in the Star Trek Strange New Worlds novel. It's the first Trek novel with planetary maps in it. And then there's also maps in there's a map in the Living Force novel because again it takes place on an island chain, and we need to kind of know where all these people are at any one time. And so that's a lot of air traffic control that's going on. And
Hmm.
things like you know theme and the larger issues. You mentioned the University of Tennessee. I did only really besides the literature courses, I only had like just the basic original composition course that we were required to take,
Hmm.
and so I did not learn a lot in creative writing over there in terms of uh, you you know, uh, theme and motivating incidents and all the things that when you're trying to teach creative writing, you would teach. Uh, I will usually start with one moment or one thematic element, where I'm saying this is how I want to try to have this is what I want to try to accomplish with this book,
Hmm.
and then all of the other themes will spring from it. So, in the Living Force, for example, I said right when I was offered the book, I said, I want Qui-Gon Jinn to walk into the Jedi Council chamber and call these guys out and say, when was the last time you actually helped somebody?
Hmm.
What is the great flaw of the Jedi Council? The great flaw of the Jedi Council is that they are insular, that they are unseeing, that they are not active. And the first section of the book is them coming to terms with that. They're aware of it too, and
Yeah.
they decide they want to go on retreat to try to recapture what it was, but also they want to try to find out what the general public thinks of the Jedi, which is not nearly as much as they thought. And so we have this case where they're getting out there, and as I continued to work on it, all these other sort of themes came together, of abandonment of responsibilities and being focused on this thing and not that thing. There are all these other bits that come about. And I begin to bring other elements in.
Hmm.
Mace Windu, his entire sequence involves the Republic Navy, which doesn't exist yet. It involves a pirate hunter who will go on to found the training school for the Republic Navy eventually. But it gets into issues of what should the Jedi's relationship with the military be? What should the Jedi's relationship with the Republic be?
Hmm.
Church and state issues. Um, um, questions of how is a ship captain supposed to keep discipline when a guy in a robe could just wander onto the deck of the ship, onto the bridge and take over. How should and so all of these things they come about as the book is going on, and again, with each one of these novels, there's something like that, and so I'll get novels that will eventually rhyme, even though the events in them are completely different.
Mhm.
You have the Kenobi novel, which is Obi-Wan Kenobi's first month on Tatooine, and that novel really has a lot in common with Star Trek Discovery Die Standing, which is my novel about Emperor Georgiou from the evil mirror universe, and her dealing with the fact that in the same way that he has lost the Republic and the Jedi Order and all his friends, she has lost her entire universe where she was the ruler, and
Mhm.
she is an exile in our universe. And they both have to decide how they're going to go forward, how they're going to let go, and completely different in every way. These characters completely different in the milieu, but as the books go on, you realize, okay, they're both in pain at the same time, in the same way, trying to figure out who they want to be going forward. And I'll have that happen. And another case like that is my New Dawn novel with Kanan from the Rebels TV show,
Mhm.
showing what happened to him in between Order 66 and the show. That is a book that also really rhymes with another one of my novels, which is Star Trek Picard Rogue Elements, which is
Mhm.
about
Mhm.
Captain Rios from the Picard show. And in Rios's case, there was no Order 66, but there was a terrible incident that caused him to be thrown out of Starfleet. That's a complete mystery to him, and
Yeah.
it remains a mystery at the end of the book, because this is a key about writing tie-in stuff. You know, your assignment is only your assignment. So since I'm setting this story, several years before the Picard show, he does not get closure.
Mhm.
He does not get closure that he gets in the series, where he learns what happened, and that he wasn't at fault in all of this. But I have to give him some kind of a win. I have to give him some kind of a place. There's both of these characters are lost. They're disillusioned. Kanan and Rios. They're both drinking themselves slowly to death, doing dangerous things. In Kanan's case, and they meet people who change their outlooks, change their give them something to do. And at least with Rios, yeah, we have to get him to a place where he at least can get up in the morning.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
whereas with Kanan goes a lot further. Kanan actually becomes part of the rebellion.
Yeah. Yeah. But you mentioned kind of fitting things into that larger universe. I imagine that that's something that you kind of go and back and forth, and there's some negotiation as you work through, and
Yeah.
some of that process as well.
At the beginning of the project, you kind of find out how constrained you are. In the case of the Rebels prequel, that was an obvious case where the show wasn't even out yet,
Hmm.
and the executive producers, including Dave Filoni, offered me a number of options to write about, and I said I want to write about how Kanan and Hera met, because it's the earliest possible story of all the offerings you put out there, and so that gives me the most mobility, and I'm least likely to collide with anything.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I'm also not responsible for drawing any more than these two characters. I'm not responsible for introducing them to the robot and the droid and everybody else. I'm
Hmm.
only doing those two, and that gives me some running room. And that's generally what I look for. if I'm in a case where basically it's a dead license or near dead, or it's an absent landlord kind of a thing, then I have a lot of mobility. I can go do whatever I want. The Battlestar Galactica 40th anniversary book I did called Counter-Strike. That was a graphic novel. And that wasn't an absent licensor, because they helped me come up with how to approach the story.
Mhm.
But it was a case where there's not going to be another show that there's not going to be a second season of Battlestar Galactica from 1978, more than likely. So I can kind of go do whatever I want, and I was also not bound by any of the previous comic books or novels or anything else. So I was totally free there. And then there are cases where you're increasingly constrained. I knew that the Kenobi novel, I didn't want to tell any more than this very small window of his life. We only really see about 5 days, even though it takes place over about 6 weeks. And then there are cases where it's a complete adaptation where you have almost no input other than you're basically staging.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so the only one of those I did was the graphic novel, the comics for Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that was difficult to do on a number of levels. One is that we hadn't seen what a lot of the sequences would look like, and so
Yeah.
we were relying on. They did give us copious, copious, drawings of things that were happening, artistic renderings of what things would look like, designs. But it's a case where you have to match all the events to what's happening on the screen
Mhm.
in a version of the movie that hasn't been cut yet. And so you get stuff like there are moments in what I wrote that ended up being lines that got cut.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
there's an artifact in the book of Indiana Jones at the college, racing through the middle of a football field in the middle of a game that's going on. They either didn't shoot that or didn't use it, but that's in the comic book.
Yeah.
And what they did on that, actually, by that point, they went in and changed the dialogue to whatever actually was said on screen, because I didn't have a full copy of the script, even though I read the script at Lucasfilm. The understanding was that some of the lines would have changed. And so, the only place where I had any input at all, uh, really, my own voice is the narrator.
Yep.
And I added a narrator, even though I don't usually use narrators because I don't like the voice of God in my books. I For a number of reasons, but for one reason is it's something that establishes facts that you can't reject later on.
Mhm. Mhm.
The only place we actually have that happen in Star Wars in the movies is in the opening crawl. The facts in the opening crawl cannot be disputed.
Mhm.
And I don't want to be the narrator, establishing such facts, if I can help it. I like to try to put history in somebody's mouth when I can, because those people can be wrong,
Yeah.
and later proven wrong. But no, I had the narrator allowed me to have a little bit of a jaunty voice that I could do things with. And then also I spotted a plot hole in the movie, and I said, "Can I fix the plot hole in my caption?" And they said, "Go for it." So
Nice. Nice. Yeah. Well, of course, by means of a couple of final questions here, just to wrap up, I'm curious about anything that you would tackle next. That's always a question because you now have Batman on the way, so that's of course a question that's always refreshing as you're working on things and always updating. I mean, And if I'm a listener out there who wants to find out about your work, who wants to pre-order a book or order a book or kind of check out more about you, any places that I would go to do that?
Batman Resurrection is the name of the book. It comes out October 15th from Random House Worlds in hardcover, audiobook, and ebook. And so we have that to look forward to. I mentioned on shelves now we've got the new editions of Star Wars Epic Collection, The Old Republic Volume 1. That's the first chunk of the Knights of the Old Republic series. The new Star Wars: A New Dawn. That's that Kanan book. That has a new edition as well. It's the first time that's appeared in a trade paperback. That came out last month. We also have, as I mentioned, Knight Errant is both the comics and the novel are back. The High Country is available in trade paperback. That's new this year. And of course, the Skull and Bones hardcover is out currently. Some stuff is coming along after that. I can't mention yet, but people can find it or be there when I do mention it on my social media. JJM Faraway on Twitter, and then John Jackson Miller on Threads and Facebook and Instagram. And then my website is farawaypress.com, where I have behind the scenes notes on most of my books.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, did we miss anything that you want to make sure to share before we close out?
I have an active convention schedule, and I have a number of things that have been announced. I don't know when this is actually going to go online, but I'll be, we're in July as we're recording this. I'm going to be doing the 605 Pop Culture Con, which is a charity event in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. That's next weekend as I'm recording this. Then after that, I'm at GalaxyCon Raleigh at the end of the month. I've been announced for Dragon Con as well in Atlanta, and then there's some other ones that I know about and haven't been able to announce yet.
Awesome. Been to GalaxyCon, enjoy that show. So excited to hear that you'll be there. And I believe I said anything that you would work on that you haven't yet.
Oh, anything I'd like to work on that I haven't worked on yet.
Hmm.
Well, like I say, I had no idea that the Batman thing it's even a possibility. So I'm ready at this point. I'm ready to let the universe tell me.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, thanks for the time. Thank you for the work. Looking forward to the book and always glad to check out your work. And I know that I'm in good hands with you as a storyteller. So many, many thanks.
All right, very good. Go Vols.
That's right. Go Vols.